Hello everyone, welcome to HCA 715. Today we are going to study scientific foundations of health services research. So basically what is the nature of scientific inquiry, how does it proceed, and also we'll be looking at positivism and other things. So basically this is trying to understand what are the actual foundational aspects of health services research. All right, so nature of scientific inquiry. Scientific inquiry is basically the reason why we create knowledge because we are inquisitive and curious about something, and we want to clarify certain things and phenomena that are going on around us. For example, why do people of certain racial and ethnic origins have higher incidences of cardiovascular diseases, for example, or have higher incidence of diabetes, for example. So we want to understand those, associations, and we want to clarify those aspects because of which we are trying to study science, and we have the inquiry. The fundamental assumption of scientific inquiry is that life is not chaotic. There is a pattern, there is persistent pattern of regularity, and that is called positivism. So positivism is a philosophical system that says that every situation or assertion that can be rationally justified, that can also be scientifically verified, and is capable of logical or mathematical proof, and therefore we can reject any theism like luck has done it, or God is behind it, and so on, and we can say that there is a scientific pattern behind it, and that is positivism. So positivism is responsible for two aspects of or pillars of scientific inquiry. The first is scientific theory, and the second one is empiricism. Um, a little bit more about positivism. It's a pattern of regularity that we already said, and it is not related with metaphysics or theism. This is mostly in natural science, but that is also being upheld in social science. So social phenomena, just like physical phenomena, are orderly and generalizable, even if we don't do the experiment in lab, even if it is behavioral, even if it is social, they are very much generalizable and they are very much orderly. So these are the factors such as, for example, given the same education, um, let's say men earn more money than women and women live longer than men overall. So these are some social phenomena that we try to understand using positivism. Social scientists try to favor an intermediate approach because social phenomena is a product of social laws and human volitional action. So there are some laws that play a role in our society, and that is kind of interfering with certain scientific approaches. And humans have free will, as we know. They have a lot of freedom, so they think in certain ways. And even if, let's say, we predict that a certain area is very safe and no crimes can happen in those areas, but still humans have free will. So there might be some crimes and incidences in those areas that are supposed to be very safe, that that can be totally unpredictable. Okay. The second part about positivism says that human actions are guided by rational decision making. So humans always try to make decisions in a very rational manner, and all the social phenomenon can be orderly, explained, and predicted. But there is some social phenomena that are exceptions to regularity, but that is insufficient evidence to overthrow the assumption that always exist in both physical and social phenomena, because scientific inquiry is concerned with a study of patterns rather than exceptions. We always want to see what is generalizable, what is uniform, what is regular. Okay, so when one woman earns more than let's say a particular man, the overall problem is not problematic, but and also when one man, let's say, outlives his wife or his partner, then that is not a problem, because that is not, that we can call as an outlier, and one exception. But in social phenomenon or through positivism, what we want to understand is regularity or uniformity. So because of existing theories, methods of data collection, and there's a lot of data analysis techniques that we will learn in later part of the semester. Uh, you want to explain social phenomena. Scientific theory is related to the logical aspect of science, and we use scientific theories as a guideline or a framework to build the concepts by which we study and explain the patterns. Okay, and scientific theories have a lot of evidence on which they are based. When theories are developed, there is a lot of evidence that scientists see over and over and over and over, and there's a regularity of pattern. Then they don't see much exceptions to those regularities, and so they plan research, they make observations, and they explain those generalizations and patterns of regularity in life. Paradigm reflects a general perspective. So if we usually hear the phrase a shift in paradigm or a paradigm shift, which means that what has generally been thought of or what has been a general perspective so far, a fundamental model or scheme that breaks down the complexity of reality and organizes our views. So we say that probably AI is a groundbreaking, and artificial intelligence, I mean, is a groundbreaking phenomenon, and we have not seen AI changing the way science is going, but that's a general perspective. Now there is a paradigm shift, and the paradigm shift says that artificial intelligence is indeed changing the way science is moving and the direction in which science is moving. So that is a shift in paradigm, but paradigm itself is a general perspective. So a paradigm is normative. It reflects a general perspective, like I said. It is a collection of beliefs that is shared by scientists, just like a theory. The scientists believe in those theories. For example, Newton's theory or Einstein's theory. It guides the research efforts of scientific communities. It doesn't really provide answers to research questions, but it only guides, right? It provides a conceptual lens through which you can study your own question. So, for example, in organizations, because I teach a lot of organizational aspects and organizational theories, one theory is, let's say, institutional theory, right? I have recently written a paper with another person, and that is based on institutional theory. And institutional theory says that organizations try to mimic other organizations. They try to behave similarly because of normative pressures, and also to strategically position themselves in the marketplace. So that is a theory or a paradigm, and it is not going to directly provide answer to my research question, where I want to study, how emerging technologies like robotics and artificial intelligence have evolved in hospitals, but it is going to guide those questions for me. Another example, social example, is that women experience more comorbidities than men, but they live longer for reasons that are not explained. But probably they have different perceptions and tolerance for morbidity. They're just more tolerant, and they have also different ways of expressing their feelings. Probably they have more women to talk to. They have more women friends to express and kind of let their stress out as compared to men, and that might lead into women living longer as compared to men. So there is deductive and inductive processes. There are two types of processes. Theory provides guidance for research that also provides an intimate connection between theory and research. So research verifies, modifies, and reconstructs theory. Okay, a deductive process emphasizes theory as a guidance for research. So you will build the conceptual framework first using your theory, such as institutional theory, and then do your experiment, which means in our case, then we analyze the data. But in inductive process, you first do the data analysis and then you build the theory. Okay, so that's the difference between deductive and inductive processes. The approach used in scientific inquiry is to discover the patterns of regularity in life. Evidence is the only way by which scientists can modify or construct theories, right? We want evidence to support our findings and say for sure when we are 100% sure that this theory actually exists. And also, let's say we are doing a deductive research in which we build a conceptual framework using the theory, and then we run an experiment or analyze data from our secondary data set. We say that now this theory gains more support because our data also corroborates the existence of this paradigm or this theory. But there is non-empirical approaches that include appeals to authority and common sense or intuition. Those are non-empirical, right? We are not running an experiment. Empiricism is basically running experiments, doing observations, and they focus on problems and issues that can be observed. Observations may be direct, as in the field studies. They used to form constructs, for example, patient satisfaction with the visit to the doctor or American people's impression of the healthcare system. So we are just observing how different races of people are satisfied when they visit doctors in their communication with the doctor, or how people perceive in the United States, how people perceive the US healthcare system. So those are just perceptions, but that is also empiricism. So constructs are building blocks of scientific theory. It is important to maintain objectivity in observations because you want to make sure that you're not influenced, you're not biased, you don't have your own personal biases or feelings or conjectures, diluting the results of the experiment. So scientists have their own values. I, as a scientist, might have my own judgmental feelings or values and perceptions about, let's say, certain races or certain populations or certain, I'm just giving an example, or certain, situations or countries. And I don't want all of those to muddy the results that I have concluded. So individual values may affect the validity of the inquiry and they may make the findings biased. Researchers should hold back their personal values when they conduct research. But sometimes they can be influenced by their scientific disciplines. For example, if somebody is coming from economics as compared to psychology, as compared to, let's say physics or chemistry, their way of thinking might be very different depending on the discipline that they come from. And sponsorship and funding may also lead to bias because if, let's say, you are experimenting on pharmaceutical drugs and there is a company that is funding your experiment, and their motive behind funding your experiment is once the drug becomes successful, they will gain a larger share in the market and become more competitive. And for that, you alter the results of the experiment. That is a bias. So that is a very important source of bias. So even though if let's say there is funding and support, we always declare who has provided the funding and support in our submissions to the journals. Reactive effect of research on social phenomena is Hawthorne effect, in which work conditions are studied on workers' productivity. And so there was one group which was given a lot of light, and there was this other group that was not given a lot of light. So researchers' presence altered the behavior they wished to study, and scientists adopt measures to enhance objectivity. They use control variables. Sometimes they use patient groups as controls. They use placebo treatment as controls, like drugs that can be used as controls. And peer review is a group of scientists that agree on results in journals, etc. Ethical standards are important to be upheld. You have to do an IRB, you have to get the clearance from the Institutional Review Board, which is a panel that reviews research and sees if you are doing a research with human subjects or not. So in healthcare research, if you are, let's say, doing a primary data collection and you're going to talk to patients or any individuals and trying to get to know their perceptions or opinions about some things, then you have to clear the IRB because you need to respect a person's right to service. They have to be confidential, they have to be anonymous, and you have to get their informed consent, and their participation should be voluntary. You cannot do an experiment on captive audiences. But if you are doing a secondary data set analysis, then you may not have to do IRB, or you may just get a waiver from them saying that this is a publicly used data set and you do not need to do the IRB. The process of developing theory. Important concepts embedded in the process of theory construction are that you need to specify the topic, you need to specify the assumptions, the range of phenomena, major concepts and variables like the dependent and independent and control variables, propositions, hypotheses, and relationships, and very importantly, you also have to specify the theory. To specify the topic, you will specify the research topic of interest, and that is based on, let's say, you are studying some literature and even news items and theories, and there is a question that comes to mind, so that will be your topic, right? You want to study that topic, but you also want to review the literature to be prepared to see whether this is an apt question, whether this question has been studied in the past, and if it has already been studied, what new can you bring to the table, right? How can you fill the gap in research? So you have to specify the assumptions. So you specify the assumptions that are related to the research focus. Assumptions are suppositions that are not tested, but they are considered to be true. Researchers should test their assumptions rather than think that, oh, they are already true. So for example, you do telephone interviews and it is an assumption that you're reaching a representative sample by doing telephone interviews, but there might be people who do not have telephones right at home, Medicaid, indigent patients, and so forth, rural areas. So you're actually not getting a representative sample. You want to make sure that you're reaching the study population, so you probably have to do a proper channel, for example, let's say paper survey, or even going door to door and doing in-person interviews. Then you have to specify the range of phenomenon that the current research and existing theories address. For example, does the research and theory apply to people of the world or only to US? Does the research apply to older Americans or younger Americans? Will the research results be generalizable to all the hospitals, let's say, for example, across the US, or only certain hospitals in Nevada, right? Or only urban community hospitals? Data has to be collected from a very wide spectrum of population for it to be generalizable and it to be meaningful. You specify the major concepts and variables. Concepts are mental images or perceptions, so that may be difficult to observe directly, for example, equity or ethics. So then you have to go ahead and measure equity, right? In some way you have to measure equity. I know for my experience that socioeconomic status is a very difficult one to measure, because socioeconomic status includes education status, how much income is being made on a household level as well as on a single level. Also, what is the race of the person, whether they have insurance, low insurance or no insurance, or employer-based insurance. Do they have do they have education which is more than bachelor's level at the graduate level, or less than high school, and so on and so forth. So all of these things together construct the socioeconomic variable. So concept that has a single never changing value is called a constant, but if it is variable, it's called a variable. And for example, age is a continuum variable. You can be, 1.5 years old to 2.7 years old. That is very much possible. And then the dependent and independent variables are the ones that the response variables are the dependent, so for on which the response you're studying. But the ones that are predicting, the predictors are the independent variables. So simply you have to understand that the dependent variables are the response variables, and the independent variables are the predicting variables. So if the variable is capable of affecting change in other variables, that is independent. But if the variable is its value is dependent upon one or more variables, then it is a dependent variable. So I'll give you an example. The organizational factors such as teaching status and the size of hospital can predict the financial performance of a hospital. So what will be the independent variables in this situation? The size of the hospital and the whether it is academic hospital or not, those are independent variables because they are capable of affecting the financial performance of the hospital, and the financial performance itself is the dependent variable. You also have to specify the propositions, hypotheses, and relationships. The proposition is a statement about one or more concepts or variables. There can be a univariate proposition, a bivariate proposition, and a multivariate proposition. So univariate proposition involves only one variable, bivariate proposition involves two variables, and a multivariate proposition involves three variables, more than two variables. So propositions, if they are used in a testable form, they're known as hypotheses, and hypotheses should indicate at least the form of the relationship between variables. So we have to be able to say that um, a larger hospital is expected to have a higher financial performance because they have a higher bed size, right? So that form of relationship is what the hypothesis tells us. And an expected but unconfirmed relationship between two or more variables is the hypothesis. So we are not going to say that larger hospitals will have financial performance. That is something for us to test and experiment. But we will say that larger hospitals are, or the size of the hospital is expected to have a relationship with financial performance of the hospital. So the hypothesis indicates which variable causes the other, or how changes in one variable are related to changes in another. So just like I said a minute ago, if the hospital is large, the financial performance will be more. So that directionality is what the hypotheses will indicate.